more of an explosive element to our offense, Taylor or Pittman?
Let me ask Frank this real quick. In your mind, which one makes us better heading forward if they both reach their ceiling? Like, who are you more excited to have on the team?
There's no black and white answer on this. Part of this is because, you're saying, man, just imagine this guy behind our offensive line. Both of them are going to add explosive. Both of them are going to make us more explosive.
And then they got both at 34 and 41. Jonathan Taylor, the Wisconsin running back, and Michael Pittman, the talented receiver from USC, and Frank Reich, the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, in there in those conversations, joins us now on Lunch Talk Live. Frank, your organization has been really good about pulling the curtain back a little bit and letting us see some of the piecing together of the draft process. Chris Ballard, your GM, a part of that here over the last couple of years. Why has that initiative really been something that everybody, it seems, within the organization has embraced over the last 2 years?
I just think we have embraced it. It's just adapting with the times. This is kind of giving our fans an inside look. Obviously, you're not exposing your secrets, but you can pull the curtain back a little bit, and we trust our in-house people. They do such a good job with it. It's been fun.
It's a lot like the trust folks have with NFL Films over the years. You build that, and then it brings fans closer, and you feel a part of it. And there's some conversation about Pittman, Taylor, and 7 picks away. You get both. Did you have designs that you guys could walk out of the draft with both of those players?
We were hoping that was best case scenario. We really were. And so, we're just talking about the order. Which one? We loved them both. We were hoping to get both of them. But we had to prioritize, and so we went with Michael first. But 2 great players, 2 explosive players, to add behind what we believe is one of the best offensive lines in the NFL really is exciting.
And I thought that was the interesting part of listening to your comments there. Your offensive line sets up so much for you guys, and now you add Phillip Rivers to that mix. So what's the decision as you're assessing the quarterback landscape over the offseason that Rivers could be the guy to come in and take this team to a little bit higher level?
Yeah, it was a unique opportunity, Mike. No one thought there was coming. I thought Jacoby did a lot of great things this year and was continuing to get better. And if Phillip hadn't become available, we would have been excited to go into the year with Jacoby. But you have a chance to get a guy who is, I believe, going to be a future Hall of Fame quarterback. I think what he does in the next couple of years here hopefully will contribute to that. And then you add the pre-existing relationship that myself and our offensive coordinator, Nick Sirianni, have with him. And we just didn't see any drop-off in his play physically. So getting him behind our offensive line and on this team, just thought it was a unique opportunity. And now we still have Jacoby, because when you look at the teams that go all the way, oftentimes you need 2 great ones, 2 guys that can come in and win in the clutch, and we feel like we have that.
Yeah, and people went, whoa, wait a minute. When Andy Dalton signed with Dallas on Saturday, sometimes the guy who can save, to use the baseball term, who can save 2 or 3 games for you is the difference between making the playoffs or not making the playoffs. And you lived in that world as a backup to Jim Kelly in Buffalo for so many years. So what's your specific messaging to someone like Jacoby Brissett at this point in his career?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Mike. I did live that. And then I lived it as an offensive coordinator in Philadelphia when we had Carson Wentz was having an MVP year. Nick comes off the bench, as you said, when I was backing up Jim Kelly. So the message to Jacoby was easy. The message was, get ready. You're going to play an instrumental part of our success. Now, obviously, we hope Phillip stays healthy, and he has shown that he can do that over his career, but you never know. And we just have a lot of confidence. First of all, we think we get an elite quarterback in Phillip Rivers, and then we got a winning quarterback in Jacoby Brissett, who in the clutch can, as you said, might come in, save 2 or 3 games that can be instrumental in the path that we want to go.
You had the all-time save in the playoffs against the Oilers and that great comeback. And we know you also authored that great comeback at Maryland back in your college days, had the record for both for quite some time. I'd love to drill down, since we have the time during this pandemic for longer conversations. Is it the mental, Frank, or the physical that's a tougher challenge for a backup quarterback to be ready, truly one snap away from having to come in and insert yourself into a football game?
Well, I think it is the mental. I mean, you got to stay sharp. Yeah, I mean, you have to get yourself in the frame of mind that you're starting every week, and that takes a real discipline. Because as you said, Mike, there's no blinking when you're in. You know, what's interesting to me over the years, when the starter's been out for a couple games, and then he comes back in, you always hear commentators saying, "Well, it's going to take him a little bit to kind of get warmed back up." But yet, when a backup comes in, there is no time for warm up. You better be on your game right from the start. And so I think that takes a mental toughness to stay sharp and ready every week.
You mentioned your relationship with Philip. When the Chargers were in San Diego, you were a quarterback coach and an offensive coordinator. So you got to live in those meeting rooms with that intensity that is Philip Rivers, that we see chirping at Von Miller, chirping at the referee, chirping at anybody who can be chirped at. What is it that you learned about Philip during those few years that has you excited about what he can bring to your building?
Well, you know, first of all, he's a great teammate. Here you got a guy who's an elite player who's done it for 16 years, played at a very high level, and he's about team first. And just love that, and do love that intensity, as you said, Mike, and think that he'll be great influence in the locker room. But then thirdly, what you get to see, you know, in those 3 years that I spent with him is just the playmaking ability. I mean, he has a knack. He has a unique knack of getting the ball down the field. And then he's brilliant smart. I mean, brilliant smart, you know, to help make those 4 or 5 checks a game that you need to kind of win tight games.
Can you slow him down? I mean, the way you talk, you're always so measured and calm, at least outwardly. Philip talks 8,000 miles a minute. I love production meetings with Philip Rivers. They're the best because you're sitting there and you go like, "Hey man, hang on a second. I'm trying to get all the names of all your kids here," and he's going 8,000 miles a minute. How did you two mix? And when you were trying to work and trying to figure out ways to game plan, and how excited he gets about concepts that you may introduce or put up on the board?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think that makes us a good mix.
Right.
You know, that we can balance each other off a little bit. And so, right, it's the natural pull of, hey, we need Philip to be Philip. We need him to bring all that he brings. But,
Sure.
You know, can we put the reins on him a little bit? And my experience is that all great players want that help. All great players want to be coached. They know their strengths and their weaknesses. So together as an offensive staff, you know, we'll work with, you know, to properly channel that intensity in the right way.
You, during those Buffalo days, did start a few games against the Miami Dolphins, I think in the early 90s, and there were some Bills-Dolphins rivalry games that were very memorable. It'd be appropriate to ask you your reflections on Don Shula, who passed away earlier this morning.
Oh, man, just one of my childhood idols. You know, growing up, my dad was a coach. You know, Don Shula was the guy that my dad would point to all the time. Hey, and my dad was a high school coach for a lot of years. You ever get into coaching, this is the kind of coach you want to be. You watch Don Shula. He does it with class. He coaches his players hard. There's just a consistency, a levelness, level-headedness, poise, but fiery, and you know, the best of all time. So, and then get a chance to play in that division and to play against him was a real honor. And I don't forget those days. And I count it a privilege to have played against teams that he coached. And sorry to hear of his passing, but you know, this is a guy who is an icon to all of us coaches. He's truly one of the greats of all time.
Well said, and thank you for sharing that. As we wrap up, let's bring it back to current day, because it's a different challenge for coaches. You are in a virtual world in terms of the OTAs that would be happening around this time. Give us a sense of how things are going with the Colts as you become the virtual head coach for now.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting, Mike, because, you know, no one knew what to expect, but we prepared for this when we saw that this could be happening. So we got our coaches to, you know, learn all the technology things that we needed to learn, got all the back support that we needed from our IT department. Coaches worked hard at it. And what's really made it go is the players, because, you know, we got these virtual OTA meetings going. And honestly, it's been 2 weeks of it, Mike, and I'm amazed at how productive they've been. I think on a scale of 1 to 10, if you went and talked to our players and said, come on now, how productive can virtual OTAs really be? Give it a scale, give it a score of 1 to 10. My guess is that to the player, you're going to hear very high scores. And for 2 reasons. The coaches have done a great job preparing, but then secondly, we tell the players this all the time. You have to engage. If this just ends up being a lecture, it's going to wear thin real quick. So this has to be interactive. And I think, Mike, even as you and I were talking for a minute before we got started, these players this is their world, the younger players, that it's easy for them. So I give them credit. They're engaging, we're taking notes. I mean, the whole bit. I mean, it feels like we're in a meeting in our building, except there's just not quite the connectedness of being physically right next to each other.
Well, hopefully that's a next step. And when we see a schedule this week, it's more hope. We don't know what is going to happen. Every scenario is being prepared for, but I think everyone's hopeful that the scenario ends up with football on the field sometime in the fall. Frank, thanks for your remembrance of Coach Shula. Thanks for a few minutes talking about the state of the Colts here, and we look forward to seeing you as this season plays out.
My pleasure, Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.